2021 meeting of the Redistricting Committee to order. Start with roll call, please.
Mr. Hess?
Present.
Mr. Payton?
Present.
Mr. Seroy?
Present.
Ms. Weber?
Present.
Ms. Parker?
Present.
Ms. Polk?
Present.
Mr. Featherling?
Present.
Mr. Hunter?
Present.
Mr. Collins?
Present.
We have a quorum.
I have received 5 requests for public comment. We'll start here with the phone-in ones with Mr. Mussman.
Hello, Chief.
Yes, Keith, this is Roger Hess from the County Board. You're on for public comment.
Can you hear me?
Here, yes, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to speak. My name is Keith Mussman. I'm on the Kanke County Farm Bureau Board and also the Illinois Farm Bureau Board of Directors, and I farm up in the Grand Park area up in the corner of the county. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the ag community in the county. We're a big county. We go from the Indiana state line all the way to Cabri, Blue County, all the way down to the Iroquois County line. There are over 312,000 acres of farmland in Kanke County. We're the people that produce the corn, the soybeans, the wheat, the eggs, the chives, the vegetables, you name it. Agriculture in Kanke County does it. We're terribly concerned when you're talking about reducing the size of the Kanke County Board because of all the things that we bring to the county. One thing we do not bring is a lot of voters. We're pretty sparse out in some of these country areas. We rely on representation of people that live in our community that we know. And our biggest fear is by limiting the number of county board seats that the representatives will be concentrated in the populated areas of our districts. We'll still have representatives in our districts, but they'll be farther away from the actual agriculture that they are protecting. We have, I'm assuming, it's thousands of miles of county roads that have to be taken care of in this county that go through the rural areas. We have police patrols that have to come to the remote areas that the towns cannot provide. It's critical for us to have representation on the county board. And for that, we would like to stay and remain at the number of seats that there are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Try that again.
Hi, this is Carl.
Yes, Carl, this is Roger Hess from the County Board.
Name and number, and I'll call you back as soon as I can. Thank you.
Okay. Up next would be Shirley Bird. Take the microphone in the back over there, please.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Shirley Bird, and I have been a homeowner in Sun River Terrace since December of 1962. I've been in this room 3 times in regards to redistricting. Some of you, if you've been around, know me. In 2011, an attempt was made to gerrymander the village into a district with St. Anne, which would made us unable to elect someone to represent us on the county board. Fortunately, since our only connection with St. Anne is the post office, Congresswoman Robin Kelly had the zip code data database updated, and now Sun River Terrace has been separated so that each village is their own, although we originally were part of St. Anne. Today, after 2011 sending, we had several meetings that we attended, and evening meeting was called in order for people to voice their opinion, and we filled this room with friends and residents from Sun River Terrace. And after they were able to give their opinions, we were placed in District 4. Today, I'm here to ask that we maintain the 28 districts and that Sun River Terrace, District 4, remain intact.
Thank you. Up next, John Brands.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman
Morning.
and Redistricting Committee. I'm John Brands from Herscher. I'm here this morning to speak in favor of retaining the current 28 county board districts. I believe they have served the residents of this county well and bring representation to a much closer local level. I remember when my late father-in-law, Marwood Hendricks, was on the county board and was one of 4 members from a much bigger District 6. As many of you know, he was on the county board for 20 years, 4 of which he was chairman. I truly believe the smaller, more compact districts serve all of us much better than those large districts of the past. Keep representation as close to the people as possible. Thank you.
Up next, Steve, is it Abersast or?
Close enough.
Okay. Abrassard?
All right. My name is Steve Abrassard. I'm from St. Anne. I served the village for 32 years in code enforcement, the Illinois Vehicle Code, the Illinois Criminal Code. I'd like to say this about the redistricting. In today's political climate, I think authority is under attack, which means I think you guys are under attack. I think if you're going to fight a war, you need as many warriors on the front line as possible. I know this is a little bit different from what these other folks are saying, but it's the idea that we need everybody to be on the line representing their individual districts so that because you're going to have forces that come from up north, like I've seen come here, and try to influence the board a certain way. And we that live in the county want to have representation on the board. We don't want the board actually listening to, it's okay, I guess, to listen to them. I'm a little bit biased because of my career, right? I'm biased, but I like there to be representation, and I don't want it to be changed because I think the representation, the whole of the unit is better equipped than if you reduce it and then just the heavily, I shouldn't say democratic, but the heavily populated areas get more representation. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Terry, you can sit over there if you're.
Okay, I'm going to try this one more time here.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Carl. This is Roger Hess from the board. You're on for public comment?
Yes, I am. Thank you. So we're ready to go?
Yes, you are.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to speak on this. So, and I'm actually calling in favor of continuing with the 28 districts as they are now. And the reason for that is because of the
rural representation that I feel is important to be on the board. And, you know, by cutting the size of the board by any number, is going to have a dramatic impact on that rural representation. And the reason why that's important is when we look at the land content of what the county is, the agricultural community and the rural representation is going to be, makes up about 72% of that area. And that 72% though makes up about 17% of the economic output of the county, which translates to about $1.5 billion of economic impact that this area will provide for the county. And when we look at what the employment is, about 1 in 12 people that are employed in the county are employed by the agricultural community. So, you know, to me, this is like one of the, if not the most important industrial, if you want to call it that, businesses that the county has, you know, going for it. So, and why is that important, I guess, to the county board? It's because the county board, truly their overall jurisdiction is the unincorporated area, which is the area that I'm talking about now. You know, when we have planning issues or zoning issues, it's the county board that these issues go to. You know, the board doesn't get to choose any planning issues for any municipalities or anything else. It is this unincorporated area that they're dealing with. And I'm sure everybody there understands that with all of the solar farms and wind farms and everything that has come before you in the last couple of years. Besides that, you know, the township roads, the township and overlay programs, they come before the highway department, which is voted on by the county board. The township bridges, that comes before the county board also to improve and update and build new bridges in the townships. And all those are important because of the fact that you know, machinery is all getting larger, heavier, longer, and everything else. So it's important for us to have those voices on the county board to let everyone know that that is, you know, going on so that we can maintain good roads and good bridges, not only for us and the semis that would also be on it, but for the fire districts and everybody else who have, of course, the larger fire trucks, the heavier fire trucks, you know, more water being carried and everything else. So it's not just for the ag community, it is for, you know, all of our small communities and everything else that are out here that we all rely on in order to provide us with a safe environment. Included in that, of course, too, is our law enforcement, which is the sheriff. So these are all reasons that I feel that, you know, reducing the size of the county board is going to be a really bad decision, especially when the cost that might be saved is going to be minimal. Because when you know, the overwhelming number of voices that will be lost with a representation will far outweigh any cost, you know, savings that may be realized. And I say maybe because future boards may sit there and go, no, we're not making enough. So that cost savings may disappear anyway. So I just feel that the 28 has given the county true representation for all of the areas, and I would certainly hate to see the rural area and of course with the economic, you know, benefits that the rural area provides, I would hate to see that their voices would be lost. So again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I certainly am in favor of keeping 28 board districts.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Is there any other public comment at this time? Any other public comment? Okay, moving on. Next on the agenda is per diem or salaried board members' compensation. Comments? Jacob?
It seems, thanks, Mr. Chairman. It seems pretty clear that per diem you get paid when you show up. Check.
Wrong one, sorry.
Check.
There we go.
Hello.
That's better.
Thank you, Kanke. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think it's pretty clear that per diem you get paid when you show up. You should only get paid when you show up when you represent people. If you don't show up, you're not representing them. So I vote that per diem is the way to go here. It seems pretty common sense. Just comment.
Is that a motion?
No, I'm just saying. You
Okay.
asked for comment, and I think that it's the most sensible thing.
Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too agree that per diem is the way to go. I think that we are here to serve the community, not to take in a salary for not being here. We're not representing our district if we don't show up and getting paid for it. I am totally in favor of per diem.
Mr. Featherly?
I'd like to back a few comments up because I really feel as though that people didn't have a reason.
Sorry.
If people didn't have a reason to be here, then
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
most of us take this very seriously. To get people on the board here, I'd say all of us do. And we're here as often as absolutely positive. And I think I missed one meeting in 3 years because there was something else had to happen. But you really need to be here in order to hear what's going on and know what's going on, because watching it on YouTube doesn't give you the same feeling as being actually in the meeting itself. It doesn't allow you to, opportunity to voice your comments. So I appreciate the fact that it is per diem, a salary. I don't think it would work out. There'd be nobody at the committee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Wheeler, are you, is it the intention of this redistricting committee to make motions, pass these matters today, and then send them eventually to the full board?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, so each one of these would individually be voted on, and then each would be individually voted on, culminating in the final one is how many districts, and then that's sent to the full board for in May if we get done before then, which I would assume we probably are. But then if they come back and this committee will start meeting with different versions of that map. So you first, in order to build what the map is, you got to tell, the board has to tell us what to build. How many districts, single, multi-member. These are all the things that have to be decided. Then we can do the map.
Okay, then it probably would be appropriate to have a motion and then discussion. I thought that these were just discussion matters. But if they're gonna, I guess, it's okay to explain kind of what the issues are, and then if someone has a motion, they make the motion, then there'll be discussion and then a vote.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we stay with the per diem as it's been.
Okay.
Seems to be the best way to go.
Motion by Mr. Featherling, second by Mr. Collins. Okay, now discussion. Mr. Hunter.
Question on the motion. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for allowing me to mention a matter which I had brought forth to several of the board members. All of us, and I think I speak for the vast majority of the county board members, are public servants, and I hadn't even realized, even known in terms of what the compensation was for the county board. I think we're here to serve the people. However, in some circumstances, we take away from some of our family and community responsibilities by being here at sometimes. For example, if there's a special occasion for grandchildren, death in the family, which takes you out of the region, out of the state, it causes you not to be present at a meeting. Consequently, you're not compensated. And I understand if indeed you're not here, you may not be compensated. However, what I want for your consideration and for the chairman and the executive committee to even consider even now that that we should consider excused absences. I'm not trying to give you a number or whatever, but sometimes, you know, people can't be here by virtue of extenuating circumstances, deaths, special occasions for their grandchildren, family members, etc., other kinds of things. So I want you to think in terms of that as well too. I'm not proposing that people not come to the meetings. Sometimes there's physiological conditions, there's illnesses, etc., which provide that they not be physically here. And in that particular instance, maybe Zoom may be the accommodation which may be able to be utilized. But I just want you to think in terms of that in the future when we're considering this per diem thing.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Collins.
Piggyback off of Mr. Hunter and a lot of the public comment earlier. One of the great things about the county board is that we are not paid extravagantly. I think there's a balance to having more representation and less costs at the same time. So if you have a bunch of representatives that are making a per diem wage and we're not making thousands and thousands of dollars a year, and we're showing up to meetings, the idea would ultimately be to make it not about money to be in this position at all. I didn't run for this position to get my check every month. So when you look at how much we make compared to what we accomplish, the per diem, especially with options to be on Zoom, you can still participate from far away. So I would say stick with per diem, and you show up, you get it. If you're on Zoom, you get it. If you don't, you shouldn't be that concerned with it because it shouldn't be about the money anyways.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Now this is going to have, there's more to this issue than just per diem or salaried. There's also setting the compensation for the board and then setting the compensation for the chairman. So that's all kind of part of this. So if you want to do it in parts.
Yeah, that is. It's
Okay.
coming up. Yeah. Do you have a copy?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion to stay with per diem by Mr. Feathering, second by Mr. Collins. We'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Searoy?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Ms. Parker? Aye. Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling? Mr. Hunter? Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, up next is elect board members by either district or at large. Okay, Mr. Searoy.
Mr. Hess, I would like to make a motion that we elect board members by district, and then we can have a discussion if we get a second.
That.
Okay, motion by Mr. Searoy to elect board members by district, and second by Mr. Payton. Discussion. Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, and I would assume the maker of the motion and the seconder that we're talking about 28 separate.
I think that's coming up.
That'll come up.
Just making sure.
Yep, that'll come up later.
I will start discussion, though. I do believe that representation by district makes your representative closer to the area that they live in or around. So that is one of my reasons for motion by, or electing by district. That's not at large.
Are there other comments? Ms. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree by district because of representation. Many of the people in our districts know us and are able to get in contact with us. They're familiar with us. We can represent them. We know what the issues are in that area. So I totally agree. District representation is the best.
Mr. Collins first.
I also agree, and as the young lady from Sun River Terrace said earlier, there's a lot of people that have fought for their representation, and I think it would be disingenuous to take that away from them under the guise of somehow people running across the county being able to serve them in their area.
Thank you. Mr. Lear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because I first started voting quite a few years ago, I can remember what was called the bed sheet ballot. There was an occasion in the 1960s, I think it would have been 1964, in which the General Assembly couldn't agree on how to redistrict. As a result, at that time, there were 177 members of the House of Representatives, and everyone in the state of Illinois had to choose from a list of over 100 candidates for each party. It was a disaster. Now, I know the number of that we would have if we went that large would not be that great, but I think the confusion that would be created in our county having even a small single bed sheet ballot would create unbelievable chaos.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Searoyce to stay by members by district, and second by Mr. Payton. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Searoy?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Up next, we have, you want to do your slide? There we go. We have to decide on the compensation for the board members, the chairman, for mileage, liquor commissioner, and life insurance. As of right now, the board members are making $70, and that's down from $74 in what, can we remember what year that was? 2014. The chairman is making $48,000, and that is down from $60,000 in same year, correct? 2014? 17. The mileage was taken away in 2014. Nobody receives mileage. The liquor commissioner now makes $2,500 and has not had a raise since 2000. And the life insurance that the county board members get is $10,000. And would you like to explain that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, technically, the county board members have traditionally had a guaranteed issue $10,000 life insurance policy. The cost is minimal, but it is compensation, so it has to be voted on. I noticed that the last time it wasn't voted on at the redistricting, reapportionment time, and it wasn't the time before that, so we have to vote on it because I consider it compensation. I think state's attorney would agree.
Yep, okay. Okay, so we'll start with board members.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Payton.
I move that we move the board members' compensation up to $75. When I first came on, it was 74, and then it was deducted, lowered to 74. Then it was lowered to $70. So I move that the compensation should be at least $75 for the board members.
Ms. Weber?
Thank you. I'd like to second the motion.
Okay. Discussion. Mr. Searoyce.
I'll add something. I'll agree with the motion. I'm probably one of the few in here that are still employed, working, and I probably lose more than $75 by coming to a meeting. So I'll agree with the motion.
Other comments, Mr. Collins.
I think that especially after the comments that I've made earlier about this should not be a position that you do for the money, let alone with the optics of how it would look to the public, because if we raised our pay by 1 penny, all we're gonna hear is that the county board raised their pay. If you guys can't make it to a meeting over $5 more, I don't think it's worth the way it's gonna look to the public. It sends a wrong message. If anything, I would vote to lower our pay, just as a show of good faith to a public that has been shaken by by politics in general in the last year. To come out of COVID, especially with the money that we're about to get for this county, if people can look and say, because the public generally gets misinformed, they're gonna say, the county's getting this money for COVID and they're spending it on giving themselves raises. It's $5. I'm completely against it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wheeler, do you have, and I know you probably do not, maybe you do, you're such a good man and prepared, do you have an idea of what the raise would be over the year if county board members received a $5 increase? Might be some quick math you can figure relatively to. I understand what Mr. Collins, Mr. Collins makes a great point. I just would like to know what the increase for board members' salary in whole would be.
If a board member were to come to every meeting, it would go up by about $200 a year.
Per 28, so, okay.
And you gotta have to keep in mind too, what we're voting on today, none of this will take effect until after the next election. You can't raise any compensation until the election.
I just think it's a fair point just to have that number out there for Mr. Collins's point, you know.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The question that I have is that for every committee meeting we have, are we going to have 28 representatives on each committee?
No. Committee meetings will still be appointed by the board chairman.
Understood that. Understood.
Right.
Call for the question, Mr. Chairman.
Someone else got to go a second time.
Yeah.
So now
Go.
someone else.
You want a second time?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. Well, I agree that the $5 raise would be very, very minimal on paper. Like I said, it's the optics of it, and the public is never, ever, ever going to see a $200 a year raise. They're just going to see a raise. That's it. That's all they see is a raise. Public servants getting more of my tax dollars, especially living in Illinois, especially living in Kankakee County. The last thing that anybody wants to see is one more penny on their taxes.
Mr. Featherling?
I'd like to, being as how we don't get the mileage that we used to get years ago, you know, some people like me, I drive 15 miles each way to come here to each meeting. And, you know, it's fine, and I don't get compensated for the gas. But I can understand where Mr. Payton's coming from, is that $5 would contribute at least half towards my increased gas costs at $3 a gallon, compared to it, you know, what it was, $1.50 a gallon a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I don't, but I'm also with Mr. Collins that, you know, this is gonna be front page of the paper that we voted ourselves a raise. So, you know, for $5, I don't wanna get in an argument with anybody. So if it goes either way, it's fine with me.
Okay, any other comments? We have a motion to raise the pay to $75 by Mr. Payton and seconded by Ms. Weber. Roll call vote.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Seroy?
Nay.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Ms. Parker? Aye. Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Nay.
Motion carried.
Motion carries. Up next, we have the chairman. salary of $48,000 down from $60,000 in 2017.
I have a question, Mr. Hess.
Yes.
We're supposed to talk about committee chairs and that salary issue? We talked about? Andy, does that go?
That's up to the committee.
Yeah.
Okay, because it kind of skipped over. It's on the same agenda line. I didn't know if we skipped over it for a reason or anything.
Mr. Hunter.
John, are you suggesting we vote on it now or what? I'll second your motion if you're going to move to approve and compensating the committee chairs compensation $80. I'll second.
I'll make that as a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, a motion to make the chairman by Mr. Featherling $80 a meeting, second by Mr. Hunter. Discussion, and I'll be the first one. I am, as a board member, I was appointed to be a chairman of a committee. I don't think personally that I should get any more money than any other board member. It's just one vote, and whether you're the chairman or if you're not the chairman. I just personally don't see where the chairman should get anything else other than a regular meeting. Mr. Featherling.
Being the chairman of a PZA, which I am right now, I go to many other meetings besides these, and I don't get compensated for any of them. You know, so when you say raise the chair to $80, it's not covering anywhere near all the phone calls you take, all the things you have to do with the planning department, and all the extra meetings you have to go to. So I don't think it's a big deal to raise it to $80. Thank you.
I understand the same thing, and I'm the chairman of the Criminal Justice Committee, and I have the same thing, but it's still one vote. Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Candidly, you know, and I've been here since July. Having been in another life chairman of the Public Safety Committee, it requires a lot more interfacing with the respective department heads in that particular committee that you oversee. Bones, you and other folks who are chairs, Lear, incumbent upon those particular positions, their roles and responsibilities are substantially more than ordinary county board member. There's additional telephone calls, meetings, discussions, interfacing with other folks, promulgating policy, interfacing with department heads, talking with the county board chairman, interfacing with external entities, which required phone calls, meetings, etc. It's more than justified in terms of $5 for that person to receive compensation for the committee chairs.
Thank you. Mr. Lear.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like a clarification on the motion. Is this motion saying $80 a meeting for all meetings or just for the meeting that a chairman is presiding over?
Chairman that presides over the committee.
So we're talking $5 a month?
Yeah.
No. Mr. Wheeler.
I just had a question for relevance for Mr. Hunter. He may know this number. How much does an alderman in the city of Kankakee make?
I think about 12,000.
12,000? Do they have 2 meetings a month plus committee meetings? How many committees do you think?
It just depends. Usually everybody gets about 3.
Divided by 3 or 4. Well, you're talking what? $150 a meeting, $200 a meeting, roughly? I just prefer some perspective.
Right.
For this committee and for everybody else. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying anything like that, but just perspective.
And also to clarify that, they don't have to even make the meetings.
Yeah.
And they get compensated.
And health insurance.
And health insurance, yeah.
Mr. Collins.
How many meetings do Karma board members have?
1.
And what do they get paid for those meetings?
6.
If we want to make the argument, like, let's see who makes the most, and let's just keep raising it. Why not? If we can justify paying ourselves more because somebody else makes more, like, I was under the impression I was here to represent my community and invest in my community, not my personal finances. even if it's $5, we're still paying $5 to destroy our optics to the public.
Ms. Weber.
Just add that I am a committee chairman. If I'm not there, I wouldn't get paid the 80. If the vice chairman is there, I assume the vice chairman of the committee would get 80. That we didn't discuss that at all. If neither one of us are there, would the chairman of the board get the 80? We haven't discussed that, but I have the opinion that I was invited to be chairman of that committee. I could have said no. So if it makes a difference to a person 80 or 75 whether to be chairman, that would be a decision each person would need to make.
Thank you. Mr. Lear, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would throw one more perspective in here in terms of compensation for public servants. And that is, I think there are many of us who do believe there's a degree to which some recognition for the work that is done does influence the quality of people that would be willing to serve. While none of us on the board, I believe, are there for the finances, it is probably true in my mind, I would say it's true in my mind, that in recruitment of those who would serve in elected office, some recognition of what they're doing, which would include some financial recognition, is appropriate. Most of us believe that you get what you pay for. And I think that is a perspective that needs to be shared with the public.
Any other comments? Mr. Wheeler.
I think that it should also be known by this committee that there was many that I think still do refuse to take compensation. So any board member can refuse to any compensation whatsoever. That's a personal choice that they can make as well. They're not being forced. The only one that's being forced is the chairman. That's the only one that has to take the compensation.
Mr. Collins, second time.
I think the compensation you should seek as an elected official is more votes in your next election.
Any other comments? Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Featherling to raise the chairman of the committee to $80, second by Mr. Hunter. Roll call vote.
Mr. Hess?
Nay.
Mr. Payton?
Nay.
Mr. Searoy?
Nay.
Ms. Weber?
Nay.
Ms. Parker?
Nay.
Ms. Polk?
Nay. You know, nay.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
No.
Motion failed.
Okay. Now, next is the chairman's salary.
You still have to determine what that committee chairman's salary is going to be. Is it going to stay the same?
Yes.
It's the same as
Same as a county board member?
Yeah,
Okay.
same as a board member. Right. Okay, the chairman's salary. Again, we'll go back. At 48,000, the reduction was done in 2017, down from 60,000. Mr. Searoy.
As many of you may know that I've sat in that position a bit, and in my experience, it's a full-time, 24/7 job. You have to be available weekends, emergency calls, things of that nature. And I think 48,000 for a full-time position to get a qualified person in that seat, and that's not saying anything. This isn't voting on Mr. Wheeler. It's voting on the position of chairman. It's taxful, to say the least. And if you are employed, it's even harder to do that position. You know, so I would make a motion that we return the chairman's salary to what it was previously at $60,000 a year.
Mr. Hunter?
Let me say this, you know, I'm a bipartisan kind of guy. Of those people who have worked with me, against me, et cetera, in all forms of state, city, and county government. You know, I reach across the aisle and try to do the best thing for our citizens. Let me say, in seconding this particular motion for enhancing the compensation, as Vice Chairman Seroy indicated, and he's on, well, the position requires, I think, the viable position requires that you interface with all 28 district representatives. Not only do you represent your own, but you have to interface with external entities, external groups, organizations. Not only do you have to interface with federal officials, state officials, even people out of state. I've seen his actions. I've seen his the benefits of him interfacing with organizations like the Hispanic Partnership, the NAACP, etc. It goes on. He's even interfaced with the Democratic Party regarding certain initiatives that impact the 109,000 people in this particular county. My particular vote is germane to the chairman, who I know to be a person of a high authority. He's been an asset in our district, and he has been held in high regard by many throughout the district and throughout the county. So I'm seconding that particular motion of Vice Chairman Seroy.
Okay. Mr. Long.
I think the question here is not necessarily about the individual as it is about the position. And going forward, this won't take place again until there's another election. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I'm saying $60,000 today for the level of responsibility of that job is probably not enough. That's all I'm going to say.
Mr. Lear.
True that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some in this room and some of the public may know that I contested with Mr. Wheeler for the position of chairman at one point. When I did, I thought that hiring a full-time administrator would allow the position to be one that did not need as much compensation. We went ahead and hired a full-time administrator who's done a fabulous job, and I can't compliment that hire enough. But I have also seen enough to realize that I was probably wrong about the nature of the position, and that in fact the requirements of the position are such that even with a full-time administrator, it is in effect a full-time job for anyone that does it adequately. Now, is it possible that at some point we'll get someone who doesn't do it adequately? Yes, it is. At that point, I would feel an obligation that board members should take the appropriate action and make sure that the person who had been chosen as chairman eventually, if they're not doing the job, is no longer in the job and doesn't get that level of pay. So that would be my comments.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
I have a question first and then a comment. Why was the pay reduced in 2017?
Yes.
So the other is, in contrast to everything I've said earlier, having seen the work that the county board member puts, or county board chairman puts in, and looking forward, if we are going to lure someone to that position to make it worth their while to perform it well and to hold them accountable, county board chairman does act on behalf of the entire county, and he acts. They sign checks for large deals and commitments to our county that are going to last for years, and I think it should be a position that's held in high regard, and I would absolutely back going to 60 or even discussing, like Mr. Long said, going higher.
Mr. Chairman, I call for the question.
I think this might be a situation we need to discuss until everybody has a comment, Mr. Payton, but is there any other comments on this? Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I joined the board, not many years ago, but we were on the verge of financial collapse. And, pardon?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. We were on the verge of financial collapse, and it was a chance for us to move forward. And of course, if you want quality, you're going to pay for quality. And Mr. Wheeler brought that quality to this board by taking a huge chunk of his salary. I mean, it affected family, his life. But he came here with the intention of changing us, moving us into the black instead of being in the red. It was a mess in 2016 when I started. And he was able to ask all of us to make sacrifices. He made the largest sacrifice of all by taking that large cut in salary.
Agreed.
And so we have quality, and now we're able to move forward. Remember, not long ago, we had a cap of $1 million. How are we going to move forward during COVID? We never had to reach past that. He kept our budget within reason, within our line of credit. We were able to maintain that because of his work. So we do need someone with qualifications of not only finance, marketing, commerce, community. Our chairman has to have all that. And Mr. Wheeler, and I know we're not supposed to be talking about just one person, but he brought that. He made a sacrifice, and look what he has done the last 4.5 years. He's done an amazing job. So if we want quality, we need to pay for it, because I don't know if anyone would step into this position with a salary and have to do all that. They would say, I'm not doing it. But Mr. Wheeler did. And I'm really proud that he is in charge.
Thank you. Mr. Searice, second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to remind the committee, and I know we're making Andy blush, but this is not a vote of confidence for Andy. This is a vote of the chairman of the Kanke County Board, no matter who it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think we all understand the job that Mr. Wheeler has done, but I would like to separate that from this vote here, and it's setting compensation for the chairman, no matter who it is.
Exactly.
Correct. Mr. Featherman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to comment on the fact that, obviously he does a great job and he's always on a call, but in order to get somebody to take that position, if somebody knows what that position entails, nobody's going to take that job. I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. We had issues and nobody wanted to step up, and Todd was in and out of there 2-3 times. I don't know how many times he was in and out of there. But you can't get anybody to come and do any kind of a job or anything for that kind of salary, what you're talking about right now. An executive position, a management position should pay over $100,000 a year, most of them, between 80 and 100. So to run a whole county, be responsible for how many employees in this county? The chairman's, he's got 500 plus employees, he's got an 18 member board, who they know that the chairman gets bombarded with phone calls all day long about things in my district and his district and their district. Not saying Mr. Wheeler, I'm just saying he's there, but I'm just saying the next chairman's gonna look and that knows about all that's gonna go, man, it's not worth my while to get in trouble for that much. So in order to get somebody quality to take the chairman position when it comes due or when it comes up next time, it's gonna cost a little bit more money, and it's not a lot of money to pay somebody to do something like that. As far as I'm concerned, it's not anywhere near what it should be getting for a salary. Thank you.
Mr. Collins, second time.
I would say that we all clearly have varying opinions on what the salary should be, and obviously to Ms. Parker, you said you get what you pay for, and we do. Is there a way, Mr. Rowe, that we could set a scale of pay rather than a set pay and say that we're gonna vote on the next chairman that comes in according to the, we're gonna vet them and say you're qualified and we're gonna vote and say you make this much in our pay scale that we set going forward, or it has to be a set number?
It has to be a set number.
That seems like a terrible way to do business.
That's government.
I agree.
Mr. Wheeler.
And just to remind the committee, we have to do this now, but going forward, we will have to do this for the next round of elected officials before the next election. And then if people want to revisit things at that point, they can do it as well. That decisions that are made as far as compensation today. So if things were dramatically to turn for the worst, for better, whatever, just to remind the committee, you're gonna have to do this again for all those other elected, you know, I think who's up this next time?
Recorder? Sheriff?
Recorder, sheriff, county clerk maybe, treasurer? Yeah.
No, treasurer, auditor, sheriff, recorder, circuit clerk.
Auditor.
Oh, no, it's the other cycle. That's right. So it's sheriff and treasurer and county clerk.
County clerk, yeah. So we'll have to do this again, just as a reminder.
And again, we're doing this because we're regulated by law to get this done for the census.
Right.
That's why we're here doing this today. Okay, any other comments? And I apologize, Mr. Payton, but I figured everybody needed to discuss this.
I understand.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Searoyce to make the chairman's salary at $60,000, seconded by Mr. Hunter. Roll call vote.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Searoy?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, next up, we have to decide on if we want to receive mileage, which is regulated by the state, or stay as we are with not receiving any mileage for the meetings. Mr. Searoy.
When did we quit the mileage? I remember having to fill out the mileage sheets. When did we quit mileage sheets? About 17 too, when we reduced everything?
14.
2014.
Okay.
And
they were always a pain, I think, to figure out like your miles, and for whoever had to calculate the miles. I think that's why I don't know. I'm not in favor of mileage.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
No mileage. Then we can just. Sorry, John.
Is there a second to that?
Polk.
Miss Polk, okay. Now discussion. I'll go. I'm like Sam or John, Craig Long, Carol Weber, Ray Fairfield. We're in the unincorporated areas. We travel probably the most. And what, Todd, yeah, you're another one. John said he's 15, I'm 16 miles each way. Each way, so. And I agree, I'm not in favor for going back to the mileage, so. Comments now, Mr. Featherling.
Yeah, is there any way that this could be changed if gas gets to be $7 a gallon or something? 'Cause you know it's possible that in the next election is 2 years from now, or a year and a half from now, right? And is it a year and a half? Year and a half to the next election. Things can be a whole lot different by then. If you got people paying $6 a gallon for gas, they're not gonna miss a few meetings. They're not gonna be wanting to get on special committees and do that kind of stuff. But I was kind of wondering if anything meetings that you come to that you're not compensated for. I come to a lot of meetings that I'm not compensated for. And, you know, it gets to be expensive when you make the trips here. You come here for other things too. I see you here all the time, like me. So those are the things that I had to promise my wife this wouldn't cost us any money. You know, to be on the county board. Because she's like, you know, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of driving, it's a lot of gas, it's wear and tear on the vehicle and all that other stuff. It's like, yeah, but I enjoy it. And she goes, you enjoy it then, as long as it's, you know, not too much expense. But can we address it again, Mr. Rowe, if gas gets totally out of hand or you can't buy it anymore?
Compensation can be changed. I think it's more than compensation can be changed, I believe, more than 6 months prior to the next election.
Okay.
And it would only be then for those members that are elected in that cycle. The changes wouldn't take place for the other county board members, so I don't know if it's odd or even that would be up next, but the others.
Both.
Both. Everybody's up.
Both.
So
Okay.
the rotation would be.
And so in 2022, everyone's up, so
Everyone is up.
it would be 2 or 4 year terms. It would take impact for everyone.
Yeah. I just didn't know if you had to take an Uber because you can't get any gas. Because I've been through gas rationing. Not rationing. I mean, we had to wait in line. I mean, I'm not going to go sit and wait in line for 3 hours to come to a meeting that I'm not even supposed to be at.
But none of these changes are taking place until that cycle.
2022.
So all the changes you're making or you're voting on today, if ultimately, even if approved by the board, they're not taking place until after that 2022 election when they're sworn.
Mr. Wheeler.
I do want to clarify, this is an expense reimbursement, it's not compensation.
Right.
So it was time to talk about it. You're not automatically given mileage, it's an expense reimbursement. So we just voted that the county board were not going to, as a county board, things were bad, we're gonna reduce our pay from 74 to 70, and we won't take mileage. That was all part of the same discussion. Like, we're in this together type conversation. We'll cut what we had to at the time. So we may disagree, but I'm just bringing that up. I'm looking at this, was the time to talk about it was now, because it was coming up in the gist, but I think we could establish mileage even right now if we wanted to. I'm not saying we do, but I think we'd have to check that out. Because you're not being just paid something, this is, you get an expense reimbursement, which we have a policy for that we took ourselves out of.
I think if you pass it in connection with this, then you're leaning more toward it being part of a compensation package. Because that's all that's on the table right now is compensation. If it was strictly expense reimbursement, then it's not something you really would talk about in connection with reapportionment. So I would advise the board, if you're not intending to make this part of the compensation, that it not be part of the discussion.
Okay.
My question then would it be appropriate for the folks making the motion to table that or to discuss it here as compensation? That would be, is what Jim is saying. We could have it in the executive committee and talk about it as a board. Maybe finance might be more appropriate. Talk about it there instead of here.
Because I'll tell you why, if you make it part of compensation, then that's what it is. Okay, and it's gonna be like that through the next individual's terms. Whereas if it's an expense reimbursement, then that's something that's pretty fluid and the board can decide to take it or not. So if times get tough and you decide not to take it, fine. But otherwise, you're not gonna be able to change that in mid-game after the new elected officials are sworn in.
So we do have a resolution on file that says board members are not due mileage unless you're on official county business. I think you had something down in Pontiac.
I go Pontiac, well, every 2 months, except for the COVID.
That type of thing is still going to be compensated then?
Yeah, but it's only out of county. Out of county travel.
Kanke County then?
That's still in effect.
And that's
So with the makers of the motion, are they agreeable to just?
Well, so if I pull my motion and we don't discuss it today, then we're not going to vote on it. We can discuss it as reimbursement on a later date.
Yeah, are you withdrawing your motion?
I'm going to withdraw my motion if the second agrees.
Okay, Ms. Polk, are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So the motion's off the floor. Mr. Featherling.
Are we looking for a motion to table it to executive and finance? No?
He pulled the motion, we're good.
Just pull the motion?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, up next is the liquor commissioner. He's now making $2,500 and there's not been a raise since 2000. Comments?
What is the recommendation?
Mr. Hess?
Yes, Mr. Series.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many additional liquor licenses have been issued this last, since they've legalized poker machines? How many additional liquor licenses, Mr. Wheeler, have been issued since the legalization of gambling? I mean, all those are additional licenses, I'm sure, that came across your desk.
It's tough to say. I I check the number because under the county code, you can only have a certain number. So I make sure we're always under that, but I can't remember exactly where we're at, because some places close, other places open. Some people are denied for whatever reason, or the business changes name. So it's
Okay.
And in the year of COVID last year, I can tell you that that was a lot of time, the liquor license situation in the rural areas of the county. Because I have to go there. I have to go there when people say that they're, out, burning, lighting up tires in the middle of nowhere at 2 o'clock in the morning. I have to go there and check that stuff out. So we've had some openings in rural corners of the county and some of these smaller bars. So I can't tell you the exact number, but I can tell you my involvement has quadrupled in the last 2 years. It's been kind of a free-for-all.
And you have to take care of all the special event licenses also. Entertainment license, all right.
Not fishing for a raise, just letting people know that it's more than you think it is. It's not just stopping in for a beverage.
Mr. Featherly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going with Todd's question, and I think ahead a little bit. How many more licenses are there today than there were in 2000?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Sorry. I just know what the maximum is, and I know we at no time could have gone over that maximum.
Okay.
So.
But has maximum changed in 20 years?
No.
21 years? 22 years? No? Okay. Thank you.
But you gotta take in consideration special events. Somebody's having, I'll use the Glad Festival, a fundraiser, or what they call a cash bash. You have to get a license for something like that. Any of the special event areas.
And everybody's doing that stuff these days.
The hearings, we've had hearings the last couple of years. We've had, because when people are having their license pulled, we have to have the hearings. We have, so there's been a lot of special cases. We let people not pay their fees because of COVID and say, when we get out of this, then you could pay your fees. And, when they let the rural bars open, if you remember that, some paid and some had to be visited and reminded multiple occasions. So it was just an outlier the last couple of years. Yeah. But I'm hoping it smooths down a little bit. Doesn't look like it, because we have some interesting facilities in the rural area that host interesting activities, let's just say. So.
No motion.
No motion yet.
Mr. Hunter.
Anybody else got any issues? I'll move that we increase the liquor commissioner compensation to $3,500.
I have a motion by Mr. Hunter to raise the liquor commissioner's fee to $3,500, second by Mr. Featherly.
Yes, sir.
Now discussion.
Waiting for Sam.
No discussion? Mr. Collins.
I think especially during the shutdowns, we saw clear examples of how licensing was a huge burden on many of our local business owners. Especially a lot of liquor establishments paid for a license that they weren't allowed to operate with for the better part of a year. Essentially, when you say you need a license for something, you're saying, I have a right to do this, and I have to pay my government to use that right. Licensing is nothing more than your government taking your rights and selling them back to you. So, I mean, ultimately, I would like to look at just less licensing in general, but I definitely can't support paying, especially when so many local business owners weren't allowed to use the license they paid for over the course of the last year. I think, once again, it's optics. We're paying the people that made our life harder the last year more money. It's a terrible idea.
Any other comments? Any other comments? Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Hunter, and second by Mr. Featherling to raise it up to $3,500. Roll call vote.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Searoy?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Collins? Motion carries.
Okay, up next is life insurance, and as far as, this is just cleaning up, isn't it, Jim?
Yeah, if the board, if the board decides that it wants to continue to offer that, then it should vote to do so.
Okay. Would you like to explain this, Mr. Wheeler?
It just had come up. Unfortunately, we lost some very, very good friends on this board the last, couple years. And so as we were going through the process of getting the paperwork straight, it occurred to me at that point that this is really compensation. And I looked back and we had not voted on it in the past reapportionment processes. So I think I might have called Jim and said, hey, I think we should vote on this, I think, and he agreed. So that's why it's back here. I didn't put a number down as far as what it is, what the cost is. I mean, it's minimal, like, $2-3 a month, whatever. But, because it's always updated. So every year you get a renewal. So we can't say it costs this because we'd have to redo the resolution every year. So we're just offering that $10,000 guaranteed issue life insurance policy. That's what the motion should say.
And this is on every employee, isn't it?
No, this is just for county board.
Just for board.
Just for county board,
Okay.
where we're not affixing anything else. Yeah.
Mr. Searice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. About 15 or so years ago, a predecessor, Jamie Romine, was representing my district, and unfortunately, he had a car accident. He was a young man, had a car accident, and lost his life. And I know his family was grateful that he had some type of life insurance to cover the arrangements. So I would make a motion that we continue the life insurance policy for county board members.
Okay, Mr. Searice with a motion to continue it. Ms. Weber?
I'll second it.
Ms. Polk with a second, okay. Discussion. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Searoy?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next one is a little bit out of line. So, want to go to your next slide? We'll go to public participation.
Go back one, I think, isn't it?
There we go.
Yeah, this is it. I forgot to do this. So
Okay, okay. All right, so we need to decide whether we want single-member districts or multi-member districts. As of right now, we have 28 districts. Every member is elected for each district. Mr. Featherling.
I make a motion, we leave it the same as it is right now. Everyone seems to be working with it. The people in the county seem to be happy with it. I like to know the constituents in my area, and I think there's 4 people representing a small area, and people might not even know who the other people are that are being involved. So it's always nice to have one face instead of 4 or 3 or 2 or 1.
Okay, Mr. Featherling makes a motion to keep it single-member district. Seconded by Mr. Payton. Discussion. No discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Searoy?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on now to public participation in mapping. Either solicit input via paper maps or the online portal.
If I could, just a brief explanation. So we have an opportunity with the mapping software that we have. The public, for a window, the board could open up a portal, much like the Illinois Senate has done. I don't know if the House has done it as well, where people can kind of go in and draw their own map with the software. So I had Dell reach out to the company to find out the ins and the outs, the capabilities. Is it a streamlined version, or is it as technical as the version that I've seen, and kind of learned a little bit about and how to manipulate it. And it is basically the same thing that the GIS department has. So the public would see the same type of interface that GIS does. It's $13,000 to add that, so that's the cost of doing this. And I did check, and there's no way to know which zip code everybody comes from. So that was one of my concerns, just as, you know, what I would say is just a board member, and if I was asked my comment, my constituents are the county. I don't need people from outside the county sending us maps. So with it being wide open, we couldn't limit it to just the county. That's my only concern. But the committee would have to decide, do you want to spend the $13,000 on the online portal and open it up for, say, a week? Because you couldn't do it for months because there's no way to we don't have that kind of time. So we're up against some deadlines. So it would have to be 3 days a week, open it up for the public, let them draw their own maps, and if they're viable, then they could come before the committee. Once this committee decides on how many districts they're going to be, then you could open it up and let it happen. So you could do the same process with paper maps, and you know, people would be, you know, could draw them out on paper and submit the maps, and the ones that are viable, we could have put in electronically as well. So, and that's for board members, that's for the public, business people, whoever. I would just say that I think our constituents are within the county in any regard.
Would we have the district maps available, what we have right now? I mean, I know they're already online, so they should be able to get them off the line also.
Yeah, I would like to be able to put the paper ones so they can just print them off. And what the rules are, I would refer them back to what Mr. Rose said in the first meeting. If they were to watch that part of the video, they would understand the Federal Voting Rights Act, and also with the state law regarding reapportionment and balanced districts and things like that. You know, so you can look at it, you know, as Mr. Rose said, there's you know, there may not be a definition, but you know what, when you see it, it'll be immediate when something is not viable per the Federal Voting Rights Act, and when things aren't balanced with population. So either way, we have to take input, and we should take input. That's why we have 2 public comments in our meetings, one at the beginning and one at the end. So in this case, this committee just has to decide, do you want to spend the money on the $13,000 under those parameters, or would you go with the paper maps?
What's the pleasure of the committee? Mr. Featherling.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to see us stick with the paper maps, and we just got done spending an hour negotiating over $5 here and there, and you're gonna spend $13,000 on a program and do something that you can draw on a piece of paper with a Sharpie yourself. So I think we should stay with that.
My brother.
Yeah.
Mr. Collins.
I would argue that usually, you know, the best option is to give people the most involvement. But if we're going to spend $13,000 on something that I mean, how would we advertise? We can spend 13 grand on it, but how many people are going to find out that it even exists in time to use it in order to benefit the public? So I would avoid spending that money as well.
You want to second that, Mr.
I'll
Featherling?
second it, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Collins. Comments? Mr. Searice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would we allow the public to come in and utilize any of the GIS software then after the fact, even if we don't have an online portal? Could any of the public come in and see that software, or, not having the numbers, it's tough to draw a map. I mean, it's kind of the cart before the horse type scenario. I mean, everybody could draw a map, but if you really don't have the numbers, the map is not going to be valid anyway, right?
That's correct. It's virtually impossible. That's why the board has that software. I don't know what the cost was, but that's why you invested in the software, because even all 28 of you, couldn't sit there
draw an accurate map.
Draw that map.
Yeah.
But I think what Mr. Wheeler said was that if someone brings in a map, Delbert, I suppose, would put it into the system, and it would then generate those districts with the boundaries drawn, which would show you the population and the deviation among the districts.
All right. Thank you.
Ask the question.
So currently we're constrained by time. There's potential to get an extension to prolong how long we have to redistrict once we get the proper census data for the most recent census. Could we then revisit this? Right now, if we're constrained to be done by June, it doesn't make any sense to spend this money. If they're going to give us the rest of the year, it might be worth giving the public the option to have this portal.
Yeah, you can always, this is the type of issue you can always come back and revisit.
Okay.
And just so the committee's clear, what Mr. Collins is speaking of is the census is potentially not gonna be ready until September. And there's really, I haven't heard any guarantees on that either. Mm-hmm. So we're up against the wall that we have to really approve our final map, if you will, by the June full board meeting. It has to be done by the end of June, but we don't want to be calling special meetings if we can avoid that, because those are costly to do that. So the goal would be, to open it up for those weeks, and then we have, along with the maps that we're drawing, like the 3 or 4 versions, then maybe there's 3 or 4 of the public versions that were viable. But we would have to do that mid-month. So we're up against the wall time-wise. I don't think it works right now, but if they do open it back up, and it would take a change in legislation, which frankly, there's a bill right now that would extend those deadlines, but then they have to start pushing the primaries. And there's not a lot of flavor for pushing the primaries next year. And that's just not, on the state level, that's federal stuff too. All the congressional races and Senate race. So it's pretty heady. I mean, we could adjust our map that we come up with if they give us that extension, but it wouldn't be wholesale revisions because we still wouldn't have all of that ability. We'd have chosen the districts, and if we see that, what is it, like some cities are using another data source right now, some counties, all cities, I can't think of the name of it, I just heard it in one of my meetings, but so they're using another data source, which seems to me contradictory to the state law that says you have to use census. So I don't know where that's gonna end up, but we're not going down that road. We're gonna use what the state law says per Jim. Census, that word is specific. Census. Yeah, it's in our county code, but it's not in what the state can use. The state can do whatever. I don't think theirs says census. I believe that's the difference. So I'm sorry to be so complex about that, but things could change when the time comes, but we just don't know that it's actually going to happen.
Mr. Featherman.
Thank you. I've been around this county 28 years or something now, and I drive all over the place, all over the time, here, around, everywhere, and I can't see any reason for any change that's going to come up in that map, because we don't have an explosion going on in particular areas where this guy's getting 500 more people. I think I've had like 12 houses built in my district in the last year. So that's, 4 people per house. That would be, 40 people. That's not a big change in the demographics of my district. It's kind of like roaded, boundaried, railroad tracked in right now, and I don't see any way you could go to the other side of the tracks or something. I don't know. I don't understand what 40 people difference would make. So I like to see us just leave it the same as it is as of right now, because there's no other way I don't see any change. If anybody in this room sees any change in their district, let's talk about it, but I really haven't seen any change in mine at all.
And that'll come with the decision of how many county board districts we vote on here a little bit later on.
Yeah. So if we stay with the 28, then the districts are laid out pretty good right now. I mean, if you look at the map, you got some guys got some town, some guys got rural, nobody's got just rural, everybody's got a little this, a little that, so it kind of divides it up very well. I mean, whoever laid it out spent a lot of time doing it, I think. And the population in my area, the Manteno area, has gone up a lot in 8 or 10 years, but not so much in 1 or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. So, and I can say that don't see it really increasing that much at any particular time.
Well, the 10-year period is the period we're looking at.
Census, right?
Yeah, the census period. But on the point of public participation, whether you do paper, you do online, just remember, like we talked about at the last meeting, when you look at the case law for challenges to maps, what the courts look at is the public participation. Did they have an opportunity to participate? So the more participation you encourage and allow, the better. And if it's a solicit input via paper, that's fine. Just make sure there's a clear process. The court's not going to look favorably if we tell them, fill out a map and they draw lines and that's the end of the process, right? So that having Delbert come in and put it into that software program that the county has, that's going to be an important component. And I think the other advantage to it is, as everyone sees, it's always easy For someone to step forward and say no and vote no on a map, it's a whole hell of a lot harder to do the work and produce a viable map. There are a lot of things that go into consideration on this map. You know, the equity in population, you can't diminish minority voting rights in those districts. All the protections, the compactness, contiguity of the districts. If someone wants to vote no, they should at least come forward with their solution. And again, whether you do it online or you solicit input via paper, you just want to make that process as easy as possible. Because worst case scenario, it does go to court. The court's going to look at that, and any judge is going to appreciate that the objector had an opportunity to come forward with a better map, and if they didn't, that's going to certainly weigh against them.
Makes sense.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, Mr. Featherling made a motion to keep it as solicit via paper, and Mr. Collins seconded it. Roll call vote.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Searoy?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Pope?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, Mr. Rowe, you have to leave.
Shortly.
Okay.
So,
Up next.
unless you're kicking me out.
No, I just.
That's what it sounded like.
No. I just didn't want you to be late for your second meeting. On the agenda is discussion about duties of the county board members and the size of effective governmental body.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to run through a few things for the board and for the public to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page on this. You know, the county board members just don't show up at a meeting and vote on stuff. They're engaged in a lot of other things outside of these meetings, before and after constituents. You know, they go to all these other official county functions. They prepare and they research for meetings. Again, it's not all spoon-fed. They do their own homework and ask a lot of questions. Hence my phone call, you know, tallies, I guess, would be, you know, from 7 to 9 at night are pretty heavy throughout the week. So for board members, which is good. It's what we're supposed to do. You know, they have meetings with, as Mr. Featherling mentioned, county staff, constituents, other elected officials. You board members do go talk to mayors and other council people, trustees, aldermen and women in other areas. So it's not just a club here. It's really, we interact with almost every level throughout the county with civic groups, commercial organizations, you know, quasi-judicial roles with zoning, code, and waste management. Those are things that other board members do. Continuous improvement and training. We just don't, you know, accept our skill set as what it is. We participate in county associations to sharpen those skills that we have, because the laws are always changing, and we always have to improve and evolve as times change as well. So when you're looking at size of county boards, which is, I believe, yeah, that's up there now. You know, there's not a lot of information out there that says, you know, this is exactly what a county board or a municipal board should be. There's no formula, A squared, B squared, C squared type stuff. You have to look at different sources and different planning activities that people have undertaken and what they reference, and you start going back. So I spent a lot of time on that. Some of this I have kind of gleaned from a report that Kane County did. They had a group that got together for about a year and a half ago, roughly, to start going through this, because they were looking at reducing the size of their county board. They were looking at maybe going from single or going from multi-member to single. So they started this process a while ago, because they were thinking about shaking everything up. But when their report came out, this was one of the quotes in it. You know, and I thought this was important. If the number and breadth of local government functions are broad and the difficulty of issues are high and the workload is heavy, then a larger legislature provides more heads and hands than a small legislature, and thus is more capable of completing the work. I thought that was appropriate for this board to consider and to say to the public, because we do a lot of different stuff. It's not just, you know, narrowed in on, you know, I mean, I just couldn't even go into all the different subjects. And I think Mr. Hunter is like, wow, you guys do a lot, you know, and people don't realize that. It's a very diverse group that everybody we need more skill sets in the room because we do so many different things that you wouldn't even see on a municipal government level.
Right.
If the proportional cost per legislator is high and the scope of the local government narrow and the stakes of legislative decision-making relatively low, then a smaller legislature may be just as effective as a large one. So again, there is no, ideal number, but it says size choices have trade-offs. However, there is no optimal legislative size to maximize performance on all municipal goals. So I thought that was an important statement because in a different form, it's echoed through almost all of the literature that's been out there that we've seen. And you could say that some of that is self-perpetuating, that you're doing a study of yourself, so you're going to get the answer that you always wanted. Like the law, Mr. Collins would appreciate that the township can only get rid of itself if its trustees put it on the ballot, so they have to vote to get rid of themselves. So I understand that some of that may be self-serving, but these are empirical studies by institutes. These are not just a county board or a city that's gotten together to decide their own fate. So size of county boards, just a few things. Administrative functions, concluding meetings at prescribed times with an agenda published 48 hours, all the things that people know we have to do. Those agendas just don't happen. Ask Kelly, because I screw them up and then she's telling me you gotta fix this, which, by the way, there's no approval of the minutes on this one. That's her fault. No, I'm just kidding. It was my fault. It was my fault. So at another future meeting, we're gonna have to approve 2 sets of minutes. So we'll get that after, we're done with this stuff. But, things do fall through the cracks. County board committees also have to advise and provide recommendations on policies, levying taxes and fees, liquor licenses, administering federal funds. I mean, there's just a whole host of other things, coordinating with other county agencies that aren't part of the county board. That's another thing people don't realize, that we don't control the health department and 911. But we have to interact with them because a lot of their systems are supported by us here, whether it's HR, payroll, those types of things. But that just doesn't happen. They've got their own boards, so we have to purposefully interact with them, even on a county board member level, to find out, some answers that we may need. So the next slide I thought was really, this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. It's some perspective again. You can read the verbiage, but 9 of these counties that are listed here on this size, they're all the ones that are over 100,000, I believe. And, you really look at the ones that are around our size. It provides, 9 of them have multi-member districts, 11 have single-member districts, 19 of the 20 county boards have between 17 and 29 county board members. The average board composition in these 20 counties is 24. That's rounded up because you can't have a prime number because of the way that the boards have to be elected every 2 years by the people. So this other chart here, and I will just draw out, as I mentioned before, take a look at Kendall County. You have 114,000 people, somewhat similar to us. They have 10 county board members with 2 county board districts, 57,000 people per county board district. So it tells you that's 5 members, and they're at large within those districts, if you will. But they each make $17,500. So you can do the math, and that's about double what we pay here for having 28.
Yeah.
Again, perspective. I'm not saying it's right, but it is what it is. You can look down the list, and Champaign not really like us, if you will, because they have a county executive, like Will County. That's a whole nother layer of government. That's very, very expensive, by the way. So when you start talking about that, the annual salary is $3,000, and that's a salary. But you can go down. What's another one that's like us? People say Vermillion. Is that even on here?
No.
No, they must be right below 100,000. They have a similar demographic makeup. Madison County, annual salary. They got 29 board members, and each of them make $15,000. I'm just trying to put some perspective out here that we are one of the cheapest things going already, and that I think is a good thing. It says a lot about what we've dedicated ourselves towards. So when people are talking about reducing the size, I would hope that when you ask the question why, there's something else besides it'll save us money, because what we will see is that it doesn't really save us money. So from that, I guess we have Daniel Bishop is going to show us some different versions of maps, and he's going to start out with the current map that we have right now. And this is the GIS software mapping tool. So this is kind of what people would see. Hey, Daniel. You're on mute, bud.
Hello, everyone.
Yep.
Let me switch over to the map.
Yep. Doing 28 first.
Yes.
So in this map right here, this is a very well balanced population map. So if you look at, you know, up in the right hand corner, number 1, District 1, that is negative 1.55% from the average. So if everybody started at a certain 100 people per district, this district would be at, you know, obviously, what, 98 and a half of the average, 98% of the average. So we're balanced here. This is a viable map. This was actually pretty good. We didn't have the numbers when we started this from what they did 10 years ago. We didn't know how balanced it was. So when this presented itself, and when we talk about population, it's lives. It's not political parties. It's not, you know, any demographic information. It's just living people within that area. So this is just like perspective. You know, this is, we're not going to get into what the currently map is, but is there questions about this to start with? You know, just on a basic understanding level, you know, District 12, almost right on the money. That's Daryl Smith's area, 0.02% over the average. So you don't see many. I think 2% was about, either way, was about that window, negative or positive 2%. And if you're looking at what that means, this map in and of itself is about almost 4,000 residents per district, and the cost is around $81,000 per year, which is 74 cents per year per resident of the county to have the county board as it is right now. So, and that's and I think we talked about $70 a meeting, so it's about $3,000 per year. Currently, we've already voted to change some of those things, but not substantially. So I guess that's it for 28. Is there any questions about kind of the current layout? And I do want to draw attention to Hopkins Park and Sun River Terrace, since we had a public comment on that. You can't do something what Jim was referring to of packing or cracking. You can't pull things apart and dilute. That's a federal Voting Rights Act consideration. That's not the state law. State law is silent on that, but the federal law is why that has to be the way that it is, and we'll talk about that in a second. Because you can't take a community that has roughly 80% African American representation and then turn it into 20%.
Just curious, my district's not listed up there. 13.
If you
Just
zoom
out of
in,
curiosity.
if you zoom in, I think it is. Daniel, can you zoom in over Kankakee?
Sure.
There it is. Lucky 13.
That what he has done right there, that gives you an idea of the different sizes where, I'll use yours, District 13, you have a small area where District 1, 4, 2, 12, you look at the size of the area.
It's people that live there.
Correct.
Yep. So that's why you start doing things in other parts of the county, and if you do it in say Hopkins Park, Sun River Terrace, and you start changing things, it's going to have an impact on what happens in Limestone or up in rural northwestern Kanke County. Everything shifts around because you've got to balance by population. So if you want to put on 24, Daniel, that might help. And then zoom in on the Hopkins Park area. I did want to kind of show the committee what.
In the 28 or in the 24?
In the 24.
Okay. I need to close and reopen. If there's an issue with sharing my screen, I apologize. Resharing now with the 24 map.
So I purposefully asked them to leave out the connection between Sun River and Hopkins Park just to draw that distinction. These are things you cannot do as a committee because we will end up in court. That is not something, in my opinion, that is viable, and I think Jim would agree because you've cracked that district apart, okay? You have to have that same type of thought process for the city of Kankakee, and really, and how that manifests, not just in you know, the city, but if it starts to bleed over in other municipalities. So you have to really, this is a tightrope to walk on. It's not easy what you're gonna have to talk about and do, so. But again, these are just examples. This isn't the final maps. It just shows people what happens. If you zoom into Kankakee, like you see what's going on in Herscher. Let me mention that. Go over to Herscher, Daniel, if you would. This is the only way, well, one of the only ways that they could find to balance the population. So, you know, we
divide the town.
You have to divide the town because it's either that or then all of a sudden the other district goes all the way into Limestone. Because rural areas have fewer people, so you got to take bigger tracts of land. Does that make sense to the committee? Yes. So what you do here in Salmon's Point has an impact potentially in Limestone. You know, so you can't just say, hey, we only want one county board member for Bradley. It's like a Aroma Parks, 3 or 4. Yeah, it's divided up on population. So, and it currently is in I think 2, right? 2 different districts, Aroma. Yeah. It's split. Right. It's in 2.
5 and
right.
3.
5 and 3. Yep.
I have to jump over Aroma to get to my other part of my district.
So again, please don't fixate like this is the final map. This is just an example of what you're going to have to deal with. If you're talking about reducing the board, you're going to have to figure that out. But once you start, you'd have to start with Hopkins and Sun River Terrace, in my opinion, and then everything else goes across the whole screen. It just becomes very difficult. Any questions about 24?
It's a mess.
So, all right, we can go to the next one. And by the way, there's about 4,600 residents per district. Approximately, you'd save about $12,000 a year if you got rid of those 4 positions for the board. And that's 120 grand over 10 years, which is roughly the cost of 1 public safety position. And then it's 0.035% of the budget. That's on our FY actual. So you would reduce those members and you would save the taxpayers 11 cents per year per resident. That's what the financial impact of that would be, yes.
That accounting for,
use your mic there,
yeah,
please.
If we go down to, let's say you cut the county board in half, I mean, just for the point of illustration, that's not gonna be any less committees or any less committee meetings or people showing up to meetings. So is that a number accounting for you're still paying per diem for less county board members to go to more meetings?
At 24, it may not have that huge of an impact, but it does at 21.
I mean,
sure.
if we're paying county board members per meeting, if you have 3 county board members, I mean, just hypothetically speaking, you're not going to have any less. You're not going to get rid of the finance committee or PZA or all those meetings are still going to happen, and people get paid per meeting. So you're just going to have 3 members that go to 28 people's worth of meetings, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it would if you cut it in half. Everybody's pretty much you're gonna have 14 people. Everybody's on every committee. Yeah. So you're not gonna save that money because they're getting the per diem.
Exactly. So are you saving any money at all? Barely.
No.
Not what it
when we talk about 10, I'll give you that perspective because that's really the lowest in the state of Illinois for township form of government is 10. That's Kendall County. So their compensation is obviously higher, but if we kept the same compensation, we'll talk about that in a second. So we can if we're done with this one, we go to the next one, look at 21.
This is 21 now.
Oh, okay, thank you. So 21, we actually did include Sun River Terrace and Hopkins Park just to show that that's a viable size district. But it also, look what it has done in order to balance population. Again, across the map, it's balanced. We start with that premise, balanced population. That's over the top of Moment. So now, the Hopkins Park Sun River Terrace, I believe, has all of Moments in it. Okay, because you have to balance that with that whole area that's, over here in Herscher. They have to have the same population. Or now zoom into the city of Kankakee, go right down Court Street so people can see what happens in the city of Kankakee. I don't think this is viable for the Voting Rights Act, personally. But you start to see how these districts, sure, they're balanced population-wise, But then you have a situation where you've got a county board district from, it looks to me, is that Armour Road all the way down to Court Street, District 14. Again, that may not be the final one, but it's balanced with 13. You see the problems that you run into. And it's not just about, hey, we should only have one board member for Bradley. Why do they need? Well, it's because the law says they need. That's why. You know, it's not, there's no way to balance it. Go
14
ahead.
would cross all the way over there into under 57 then?
Yeah.
Am I looking at that right?
Yes.
Wow.
So that's just, this is just one way to balance it, but you can only do so many things. You can go, you know, east and west, or you can go north and south. You know, so they can twist different directions, but it has a negative impact on another area.
Anytime you see little shapes on top of shapes, is a bad sign when it comes to districts, town or anywhere.
The smaller you go, the more gerrymandered it has to be to balance. I will say that's been my experience. I'm messing with this software for 2 months. Is it makes it very difficult to have compact areas, these districts, as you've already voted single member, makes it very difficult. I'm not saying you don't want to do whatever you're going to do, but you have to take into mind what the end result would be and what you're going to have to defend at some point if there is ever a legal challenge to the map. So these are just examples. We can talk more about it. Do you guys want to go to 18?
Oh my goodness.
Want to take a look at 18? Yeah. How about it?
Oh, Andy, you missed.
Oh yeah.
That 19 cents.
So 21 single member districts takes it up to about 5,300 residents per district. So you've saved about $21,000 a year, and that's marginally realized, as Mr. Collins brought up. People are going to start to have to be on more committees to get quorums. You have to have a minimal amount on to be there. You've saved 0.064%. 0.064% budgetary savings. So which equates to 19 cents per year per resident you saved by taking it from 28 to 21. 19 cents. And then you've obviously disaffected voters in the rural areas and potentially in the cities as well. So we're at 18 and things start to get really interesting.
Starting to look like a map of the state.
Yeah. So you start, you know, you look at the size of these districts. Again, I kept Hopkins and Sun River Terrace, but now you've got all of Moment's. You've got Grant Park and Mantino together. I mean, it goes Grant Park. I don't know how you address Hopkins Park and Sun River Terrace without having what happened in one happen. Go all the way over to Mantino, because again, population. It's not constituents or neighborhoods at that point. It's all on population. So zoom into the city if you would. This one should scare everybody, just my opinion.
Wow.
You really start to see people that are in Kankakee also having large chunks of Bradley, or those districts are turned, instead of north and south, they could be turned east and west. But then I think you get into voting rights issues, because then you've got 3 or 4 county board members all in the same district running against each other. And I don't think that's going to fly either, because then you basically eliminate minority representation on the county board, which I would definitely steer clear of, is my recommendation. But you see what happens. The ones in the cities, they get bigger, if you will, and then the ones in the rural areas just blow up completely. Yeah. But again, you could probably find a population equalizer, but we have a very unique situation with Hopkins Park and Sun River Terrace that you don't see in many counties in Illinois, where we have a diverse rural population, you know, that we can't mess around with. You know, those are federal laws, and it's the right thing to do besides that, even if it wasn't a federal law. So, so that's an example. Any questions about this? Again, just examples. Don't fixate on being the final map. This is just what you would have to consider, because you got to pick a number of districts. So go ahead.
Takes you up your members 6,100.
Yeah, well, you're flipping it to the 10 member. Yeah, we go to over 6,100 residents per district. And by the way, I'm using 110,000 as just I don't know where we're at.
Yeah,
we could be at 90 for all we know. I don't know what's going on. So yeah, we've saved a total of $30,000 a year but it's likely unrealized because of the committee thing really starts to take effect then, which is a 0.094% of budgetary savings. So we saved 27 cents per year per resident by cutting 10 members off the county board to save 27 cents per resident per year. All right, and this is, that's just crazy, in my opinion. But other people may say that's exactly what we want, so I'm not gonna put words in their mouth. But I don't even need to zoom into the cities. You probably know what happens there, but we'll do that as well. So this 10, we go to 11,000 residents per district. We've saved $54,000 a year, which I bet with all the committees and everything, labor negotiations, all of that kind of stuff, we'd probably be maybe 20 grand savings at the end of that. I don't think board members you would be able to find people to run for the board because they're gonna have to be here so much. So you're gonna have to up pay substantially, you know, at that point. And I'm not talking like to 100, I'm talking you start to look like some of these other areas. And then 0.165% budgetary savings, so you saved a whopping almost 50 cents per year per resident to take the board from 28 down to what the minimum we see in the state of Illinois is 10. So
there's only 4 representatives in the unincorporated areas.
Right.
Yeah. So you see, I mean, we showed you the I don't call it worst case scenario. You know, what's the biggest impact? But the biggest impact really is all of those people in the rural areas have lost their voice. I mean, you really have disenfranchised.
Ms. Parker's got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I'm looking at this, I look at it, well, fear, you're gonna have the same 10 people making decisions on all committees. It'll all be the same. There'll be no diversity, no change of opinion. So those 10 people would control the board. That there would be no other opinions outside. I mean, how would people even realize what's going on if you're serving on the same committee all the time? And then you're coming back to the general board, we agreed to that at the last meeting, so there's no arguments at all. So that concerns me. I like representation. I want representation.
I'll make a comment after that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It would turn our statesmanship into very political positions. And I'd rather be a statesman than a politician.
Mr. Collins.
I like to think, as an elected libertarian, that our main focus is on putting the power in the hands of people and keeping government limited to its powers and as small as possible. That being said, having a 28-member district is more representative of small government. It's pretty clear that Illinois' politics as a state are an absolute disaster. It's not always going to be cut and clear, especially to the public who doesn't regularly have access to the inner workings of local government. That cutting a board of 28 members when I ran, and I think I've said this before, when I ran, I thought the idea of 28 districts was asinine for a county that had 110,000 people. But now that I'm here and you see the work that goes into the county board, as I said earlier, this should be a position, and I would ask my fellow board members that you should look at this as an investment in your community, not a job. You're investing in the people that live next door to you. You're investing in your own property when you show up here, when you have a voice, and when you give a voice to the people around you. So that being said, on paper, the objective should be to represent people at the best possible cost. And if we really want to look at getting rid of costs, there's plenty other places to look in our state and in our county. And if you dissect this issue, it's clearly more representative of people fiscally and vocally to keep 28 members. It just doesn't make any sense to get any smaller.
Thank you.
Should we ask for public comment at this point?
Well, I was going to ask if there was any other questions, and I was going to.
Yeah.
Would you step up to the mic, please? State your name so we have that on record.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Marta Perales. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, my name is Marta Perales, and I'm a resident of Moments. I want to voice my opinion to keep the board size at 28. Smaller districts provide a voice to the people and keeps them better connected to their county board members. At a time when there is a lot of mistrust in government, some warranted because of the lack of transparency or the lack of information provided to the public. We must do whatever we can to restore a public trust. It's great that 2 public comment sessions were included today, as I am concerned about the lack of public participation. I watched your board meeting last week, and about a dozen people watched online in terms of redistricting. Today, there are about 12 people watching online. I think that's a failure when we get that low of a participation of people watching online. We're talking about our future. So every aspect needs to be reached, whether it's the newspaper, social media, other ways to get that message out, and not just one newspaper. There are other newspapers in Kanke County that you guys can advertise in terms of these public hearings. I am concerned that you said at this meeting about the public optics of a $5 raise for county board members, but optics was not discussed for raising the chairperson's raise salary by $12,000, but the $13,000 for the public for investing in an online portal was denied by this board. All of a sudden, the cost is simply is not warranted to bring fairness to the map drawing process. As it was stated earlier, is a I'm going to quote this. It is a tightrope to walk the balance of the population. And then the chair has spent 2 months with proposed maps using the GIS software. Again, how is the public supposed to do this without the software? I also want to make a comment about the county board website. I'm glad to see the calendar now is on the site listing all the county board meetings. However, there is nothing on there about redistricting on the county board website or your agenda. I had to find it on Facebook of all places, not on the county board website. And again, I found it on Facebook. It was posted after 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the public's not paying attention to what's going on at the county board level. You meet on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 9 o'clock, but yet you release the information after 4 o'clock. That's a disservice to the public. If you wonder why there's no public participation, it's the way you guys are getting that information out to the public. I also want to note, it's been great to hear you guys doing the discussions. I wish there was more people here. I do want to also mention, in terms of reducing the county board districts, I would like to see a ruling from the state's attorney general. 10 years ago when this happened, when there was a discussion about the number of districts, it had to be approved by the voters. I haven't seen that yet. Thank you for your time.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Okay, moving on. Board member comments before we go in. Any board member comments? Mr. Collins.
I'd like to talk to the young lady or address the young lady that just spoke. I think she raised a valid point that I vocally was against raising a $5 pay increase for board members, and I did vote to increase the board chair's salary. I, once again, ran to represent my community, and I'm not looking for a pay increase. I'm not here for the money. I'm here to make sure that we keep representation for people. The county board chairman, however, when he's not asleep, he's at work. And I've seen that not only with himself, but when Mr. Ciro was sitting in the seat. It's a hard job, and I personally I haven't met anybody, and I don't mean that there isn't anybody. I have not personally met anybody else on this board that's as qualified to be the board chairman as the one that we have, and a person that's doing a fantastic job. Once again, not basing this pay salary off of him, but even going forward, we need to provide a respectable compensation for a job that requires so much. And I would like to reiterate that a really wise person once told me, you teach people how to treat you. So when we look at the fact, I notice it all the time, that there's 2 or 3 or 5 or maybe 12 people watching big meetings. We've taught the public how to treat us. We've taught them to ignore us because there's so many overlaying layers of government in our county. You live in a township, you live in a county board district, you live in a school district. You live in all sorts of different taxing bodies and have all sorts of different representatives, and it's hard to keep track of it, and it becomes annoying, and it's off-putting, and it's genuinely by design to keep the public disinterested. So once again, I'd ask my county board members going forward to be representative of the people that are around you, listen to your constituents, and educate them, help them understand too. I did not know nearly as much as I did 6 months ago as I do now. So we need to make ourselves more available to the public, and we should work on our Facebook pages. We should work on our website to make sure that we're really educating people on what's going on in their community.
And yet, Ms. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jake, for those comments. I will say that for years, I wanted nothing more than to serve on this board. And I worked really hard campaigning to win this seat. I am here to represent the district that I was elected to serve. And to grow to a larger district, I think would, as I said before, really enable me to do that job. Right now, I'm able to answer every phone call. I make trips out to where this, hey, can you come look at this problem? Can you, and I'm sure Delbert Skimmerhorn, when he sees me in the hallway, he runs the opposite direction because, hey, Delbert, or I write him. But I'm out there, working and not even thinking about compensation. And when Andy asked me to start the animal welfare, I haven't received any compensation at all for 5 years. I don't. There's never been an issue with that. That for me, animal welfare is a passion, and never once have I even thought about compensation for that. I'm here to do that job, and I do have to run twice a day on Wednesdays for criminal justice, which I love, and then come back in the afternoon to serve for AWAC. But I really think that keeping our districts the way they are right now is beneficial to all of us. I can't even imagine if we had to eliminate some. If I had to run against Todd Soroy, who is an amazing county board representative, I would say no. I would never run against Todd because he does a darn good job. But I would still be there to help him. But I feel that we just need to keep it the way it is right now. And I know a lot of people are going to be upset about that because they think that we're in it for the money. But they have to realize there's some of us, most of us, maybe 100% of us are here to represent the county. Thank you.
Any other comments? Any other comments? Okay, up next we have to adopt the number of reapportioned Kanke County Board districts.
Sure.
Mr. Featherman.
I make a motion, we stay with what we have now at 18, or at 28, I mean. Sorry. Sorry, I lost a digit.
Second.
28.
We're awake now.
Okay, Mr. Featherling makes a motion to keep the 28 board member or board districts, seconded by Mrs. Polk.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pat.
Comments? Discussion? Mr. Searice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Tinker, thank you for the kind words. I would say the same about you. You are awesome, and as well as all of our 28 board members, I believe, do their service to their districts. So I support the 28, leaving the number at 28 to ensure that you have the representation in your district, and that each board member would be able to have a personal connection with their constituents.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just thought back to one of the recommendations our state's attorney made, and I think it's a good one. I think that it should be addressed if the motion is 28, and it is on the floor now. We should address why not 21. Is your feeling that 21 would not provide that representation? I think it should be stated on the record, so at least address, because it was an advisory referendum. The public did weigh in, but again, they also weighed in 2010. When we changed the form of government, we went from multi-member to single-member.
Correct.
That's why it had to be on the ballot. This does not have to be on the ballot. at all, because we're keeping the same form of government. So that part about it is there is no legal question whatsoever about that. So I think it would be important that the board would at least state on the record why 21 is not something they would prefer.
Go ahead.
It would disenfranchise the rural vote. It would disenfranchise the rural resident. I don't know if Mr. Featherling agrees with that, but it would.
It's going on in big government right now, that they're separating the big cities are running the country, and the smaller rural areas are not getting their voice. So I really like to make sure we stick to the rural areas getting their voice. I'm sorry we're getting left out on the whole country thing.
Ms. Parker.
And I think we need to go back to what Mr. Mussman said in his public comments, that it's a farm community. A great portion of our county is farm agriculture, and we need to represent the farmers.
Any other comments, Mr. Collins?
I would also point out that the smaller districts failed to show in any tangible way how we would save any real money, especially when we factor in the added workload to the remaining board districts. I see no financial savings, and I see no a lack of representation, so you're getting less bang for your buck.
Any other comments? Any other comments? We have a motion by Mr. Featherling, second by Ms. Polk, to keep the board districts at 28 districts. Roll call vote.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Seroy?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, what's next? We got another slide. The full board will vote on these recommendations at the May board meeting. Next Monday and the following Mondays, we will continue on until we come up with the maps. Any questions? Mr. Wheeler.
I just wanted to clarify, this committee then now has discharged its duty for the first part of this. They will not meet again until the full board approves. And then different versions, the public will figure out when that release date is going to be. It could be as soon as probably the day the full board approves what was done here, if they so choose to. And then it can go forward to map drawing at that point. And then this committee, once there's maps produced, then this committee will get back together and they'll start that Monday schedule. So we don't have the date yet because we don't know when the maps are going to be ready. Like, it'll be 2 or 3 different versions, and then we'll have 2 or 3 different public versions that meet the criteria.
Mr. Featherling.
I have a question for Andy, actually. Does this mean that we're not going to meet again until after the county board meeting next month?
Correct.
So it'll be the following Monday after that county board meeting?
That would be the soonest, and that's if there's maps developed to consider.
Okay.
Because we have to give the public time to submit maps. Okay. So I would say probably don't count on the next Monday.
Okay.
But we should be by the final Monday of the month.
Okay.
Probably the 24th.
Probably the 24th.
County board is the 11th. So
we have to look at timelines though, because we still have to have it done for the full board.
Tentatively put the 17th on your calendars.
Okay.
That would be the following Monday after the board if we have things ready. If not, it would definitely be the 24th.
Okay. And we will be notified of that by email then?
Yeah.
Kelly? Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe even phone calls.
Will the website be updated?
Yes. Yeah, the website will be. We still have all the redistricting stuff from 10 years ago on the website. We'll make sure that this gets up there. I will. I'll wait until everybody's done talking, then I have a comment at the end.
Mr. Featherling, you second time?
Well, I thought, are we going to set a time frame to tell people they have to give us a map?
Yes.
I mean, you're going to set 30 days, 60 days, 2 weeks, 1 week, 1 year, or what are you going to give them?
It's probably going to be a week or 2 because we have to approve it at the June meeting.
So at our county board meeting in June, that people will be submitting their maps, or just the county board members submitting their maps? We got to.
No.
Yeah, let's get it.
The maps.
I want to make sure it gets organized. I'm thinking people watching on TV, they don't know. People on TV don't know.
So when the county board approves or alters what was done here today.
Okay.
In the second Tuesday in May.
Okay.
Whatever that date is, May 10th.
Okay.
Then the maps are being created based from that day forward.
Okay.
Okay, so the public can start drawing maps, so we'll have the paper maps all ready to go. Everything will be ready to go at that point, and then we'll open up the window. They can start drawing them. We'll just accept them for like a week window, so we can get them into the system, the one that's viable.
Okay, so you're only going to take paper maps for a week then? From
yes,
people.
Exactly.
Okay. I just want to make sure you state that.
To go 60 days.
I want the 12 people that are watching this to know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And
we should iterate that the choice was made because spending 13.
use your mic, Mr. Collins.
We should reiterate that the choice not to use the portal was made because spending $13,000 to give people a week-long window to do something seems really fiscally irresponsible. I definitely want people to have all of the technology available to them to participate as much as humanly possible all of the time. It just doesn't. It would be virtue. It would be something that people could, that elected officials could say, look, we gave you the opportunity, and then not point out that they only gave them a couple days. To the young lady in the back, that's the only reason that I would ever not support. And we made it clear that going forward, should we get an extension on this, we can go back and open that portal if it makes sense, if it's going to give people a time frame that they can actually use it in.
Okay, and correction, it's May 11th. The county board meeting is May 11th.
All right. So is it okay if I have a comment,
yes,
Mr. Chairman? Because I don't know if people realize that we're not normal here in Kankakee County. This is all a public open process online where we meet Open Meetings Act standards when we release agendas 3, 4 days, 5 days before the actual meetings occur. So we are completely in the right as far as Open Meetings Act goes. The second thing is, when has the Illinois General Assembly actually showed you how the sausage is being made as far as map drawing goes? We're doing things that nobody's doing on the county level that I can find. We're broadcasting. This part of the discussion is usually done in the smoke-filled back room, what we just did today. So while I will say that I'm not excited about that comment, I will say that it is disingenuous to say that we're predetermining anything. This is all completely transparent and open process that you won't find anywhere else. So we're doing this different than most, than as far as all that I can find. So thank you.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Seroy, second by Mr. Collins. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. See you, Dr. Polk.